In this video, we're taking a look at an extremely rare 1963 Dodge 330 sedan factory lightweight. This is one of only 34 produced in 1963, and it's one of one in this color. This thing is crazy rare, it's worth a ton of money, and it was produced in a really special time in super stock drag racing where GM, Ford Motor Company, and Chrysler were doing battle with factory-built drag cars. Before the muscle car wars really kicked off in 1964, there was plenty of muscle amongst the big three in Detroit. Special dealerships throughout the country could order these factory-prepared drag cars. One such car did not get a whole lot of publicity, and it was this one-of-one combination, a silver 1963 Dodge 330 sedan, and it came with the factory lightweight components. And when I say lightweight components, I mean an aluminum hood, an aluminum hood scoop, aluminum front fenders, aluminum front bumper, and aluminum front bumper supports. These cars also had the battery moved to the back of the car. They had factory exhaust cutouts. These things were legitimate factory race cars. In addition to the lightweight components, these things had serious horsepower. This car came with a 426 cubic inch Max Wedge engine. These things came with 13.5-to-1 compression from the factory. That's pretty wild to think about. Cross ram intake, 2 4-barrel carburetors, and believe it or not, these things actually had a push button automatic transmission. This one had the 727 push button on the dash, and that's how these guys raced them. There was no special trickery or anything like that. You drove it with those buttons, and these things were really deadly in the super stock ranks. So the most famous of these 63 lightweight cars were the Ram Chargers. They had 2 of these cars, and they dominated. The other cars, like this one, they went out there and held their own regionally, but when it came to national events, it was really tough to beat the Ram Charger guys. This car was ordered by Wain Pearce, and he ordered it from King Dodge in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and this thing has all the right equipment. This car has been restored extremely well, and it's restored back to its 1963 configuration. In my research on this car, I was only able to find one picture from the 1963 NHRA Nationals in Indianapolis. And even though this isn't the greatest picture in the world, it's not quite in focus, the back of the car is cut off, you get the idea. They're really getting after it in this car, and look in the other lane. That's one of the 2 Ram Chargers in their factory lightweight Dodge just getting out ahead of them. This car continued to race through the years. You can see on the quarter window it actually has a 1973 and a 1974 participant decal, meaning that this thing continued to race throughout the years. And if you open the door, you can see the remnants of a roll bar. So when this car was restored, they removed the roll bar to put it back to 1963 configuration because they didn't run a roll bar back then. This thing is very authentically restored. You can see it's got factory type steel wheels on it. It's got pie crust slicks on the back. You can see the stance is up. That means that they've twisted those torsion bar adjustments to kind of get this thing standing up, and they naturally sat a little bit higher because there wasn't as much weight on the front end. And as you look at this thing, you can see a little bit of age and a little bit of patina on that front bumper. Now that aluminum could be polished to almost like a chrome finish, but this owner decided to leave it a little bit dull just to kind of give you that clue that this is a lightweight car. And he did a good job with the restoration. This thing is slick. It's got some great details, but if you look inside, the interior is actually the original red interior that came in this car. So the only things that have been added to the interior, you can see a tachometer, you can see a couple of Stewart Warner gauges that are in a custom little panel, and this thing is, you know, it's stripped down to the bones. It's radio delete, it's heater delete. This thing was as light as you could get one back in the day. So it's a really neat piece. It's just like stepping back in time to see what these cars were really like in 1963. The only thing that would make it better is if there was a factory Ford and a factory Chevrolet here to compare it to. But I loved being able to see this thing up close and personal.